This is Michigan's AutoTalk Podcast, and this is episode number 60. We remind you, every episode of Michigan's AutoTalk Podcast is about celebrating the automobile, everything automotive. That's good. Go ahead.
We're going to just
keep
laughing.
Yeah, swing and a miss, start again.
And supporting you, car and truck owners across our great state of Michigan, the birthplace of everything automotive. We are here for episode number 60 with really a great backdrop, the Gilmore Car Museum. We are actually, we sound like we're not outside because we're inside the administrative offices of the Gilmore Car Museum. We're with the president of this wonderful establishment. Roughly 2 years, is that right, Josh?
Coming
Russell?
up on, in September.
Right.
We got to talk later, see how you got that job.
I'd love to hear the story, and I think we probably have already talked about that. But I want to, in this episode, we really want to talk about the grounds, the museum, and when you, especially, I know there are people listening to this episode who have never been to the Gilmore Car Museum. There are people just get busy. I remember a long time ago, I did a talk show on the radio about people who had never been outside of their hometown or Michigan, born and raised, who had never been to Mackinac Island, never been to any other city than the city they lived in. It always blew my mind. And I'm sure there are people who have not been to a great destination like the Gilmore Car Museum. The location is it Hickory? It's Hickory Corners, right?
Hickory Corners, okay. Correct, yeah.
Which is let's establish that, Josh.
I think it's the corners right up here on 43.
Is there a mayor? Is there a courthouse? Are you the mayor of Hickory Corners?
I am certainly not the mayor of Hickory Corners. I mean, there is a U.S. post office.
Really?
There's a U.S. post office in Hickory Corners, the Hickory Corners Fire Department. There's police. I mean, it's a small town, but we are
about the size of
the campus of Gilmore.
We're the largest destination in Hickory Corners, or the greater Richland. Hickory Corners area. But like you said earlier, about 20 minutes outside of Kalamazoo and about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Grand Rapids, depending where you're at, and midway between Detroit and Chicago for those people traveling a little bit of a distance.
And there's so many great things to do here, and that's what we're going to do in this episode, look at some of those exhibits. Real quickly, the museum's been around for decades.
Since 1966. Okay. Though if folks have been here many years in the past, there's been so much expansion in the last 10 years, 10 to 12 years, that they probably wouldn't recognize the place. It had been, a smaller collection of red barns, and that's how it started, as each barn was either, moved here board by board or built on site after Donald Gilmore, bought the property, founded the museum, and started it as a 501c3 nonprofit. But in the last 10, 12 years, I mean, the entire Heritage Center has been built. We now have 7 different partner museums on the campus. It's grown a ton. So
and you were saying about 130,000.
That's correct.
Visitors a year. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, between museum visitors, between all the school and educational tours that we do, group tours, and then folks who come here for the different car shows or the special events or the concerts that take place out here each year.
I've got a question that I've been wanting to ask somebody for a long time, and it never happens. It's May. It's Memorial Day weekend. I know that somewhere in here, I think the founder's brother was the Gilmore that sponsored A.J. Foyt for many years.
Yeah, correct. Same family.
And you
Absolutely.
have a 77,
I think the 74 Coyote Foyt car is actually on display right now.
Okay.
Talking about exhibits, it's on display right now inside our 50s, 60s gallery.
Okay.
And it's part of a kind of a mini exhibit in there, and that's race cars with Michigan roots. So we actually have the Foyt Coyote car that the Gilmore family sponsored.
Did you have an early Henry Ford car he raced on Lake St. Clair or something?
I believe that's been on display here before on exhibit. I don't know if it's out on display right now, but in that race cars with Michigan roots kind of mini exhibit, we have a Bonneville Streamliner that the Haas family campaigns out of Livonia, Michigan, right? So that they tried to go 400 miles an hour and caught on fire on the salt last year with burning up the Gilmore logo. But it's cool. They basically like knocked the salt off of it and washed it up and dropped it off. And here it sits in a cool display. And then we're lucky to have another a Lola T163 Can-Am race car that has some Detroit history to it, which is cool. And then a 1966 Indy car, an Indy Roadster that Gordon Johncock drove, who's from Hastings, Michigan, nearby. And the family actually, the fellow who owns it, who has it to us on loan, just a few years ago, he hired the family again who painted the car, put it back in its original livery. He actually had the family in Hastings, paint it for him, bring it back. So it looks great. And then we have another Penske PC6 Indy car. So that's one of the exhibits.
For an IndyCar fan like me is a big deal because Ford was getting out of IndyCar racing, so Foyt bought the rights to the engine. He made his own chassis like Penske kind of did back in the day, and it was all him. Mm-hmm. And it was sponsored by, I don't know, furniture stores or something the guy owned?
Is it Gilmore Department Stores?
He hooked up with him, and they had a long run together, and there used to be rumors when I was a little kid we'd have to stop at, I don't know, I think it was a Holiday Inn or something. The car was in the bar at a Holiday Inn for a while, and then it would get moved somewhere else. Or, I don't know if it's that exact same car because he had like 5 of them from that era. And he raced them for several years, making changes as they go. But I think that's neat right there. That's a serious piece of history.
It's a really neat piece of history. And interestingly, I saw it on social media these last couple of days. Tony Stewart was down at the Indianapolis Motor Speed, our friends, Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame and Museum. He was down there with Jason Van Sickle and was getting a chance to go in the basement to look at one of the other orange Foyt cars. And Tony is a huge. I've worked with him in previous jobs, and Smoke is a huge Foyt fan, and so he was super excited to see that one. And I'm looking forward to when he gets over here to the Gilmore Museum, he can see the other one.
There you go,
and check that out too.
The ultimate made in Michigan.
One thing, I was here with my son a couple of years ago, and I was really enamored by the pedal car exhibit. Now, don't laugh at me.
That's a thing.
It is a thing. These things they go for thousands of dollars, and you've got a really sweet collection of pedal cars.
They're really neat. The pedal cars are really neat, and they're in the building, in the barn that also houses one of the very few Disney Studios sets that ever made it out of Disney hands. Our founder, Donald Gilmore, was friends with Walt Disney, and there was and Walt Disney came here to the property not too long after Donald bought it in 1966. At the end of the production of a Disney movie called The Gnome Mobile, they actually Walt, and they basically in the film they reproduced. There's a Rolls Royce that's on display out in the barn, and they reproduced at the Burbank Disney Studios the back seat of this Rolls Royce, but made it like giant in scale so that normal sized people would look like little gnomes. So that actually has been here when that movie wrapped shooting and they did all the reshoots. Walt Disney shipped the Rolls Royce and the set here to the Gilmore Car Museum. So it's been here since 1966, and it's in the same in the same building with the pedal cars. But when I started working here, I felt so guilty. Like I felt like it was torture to have all these valuable pedal cars and have these children coming through and families, but be like, you can't touch them, you can't ride them. So one thing that has changed in the last year is we do have during the nice part of the season, we at least have reproduction pedal cars that we put out in a fenced off area. We call it Pedalville, and we at least let the kids ride around on pedal cars a little bit. Another experience that kids can have.
I remember they did do that at the auto show.
Yeah, they were running around in electric cars, and they had the pedal cars for the kids. It was cool.
Now, with that old Disney set, are the kids or anybody allowed to hop on that little...
It's so funny that you asked that. For decades, they did allow it, but then all of a sudden, like I think the materials really started to degrade a little bit and got some age on them. And so then we realized, like, I mean, I've been told that there's no other Disney set that is
Gotcha.
out of their hands and on display anywhere. And actually, Walt Disney passed away shortly after it was delivered here.
So you got to preserve it.
And so the concern about preservation made it.
So I know that barn, I know that setup, and that's a good reason why I asked my question first before I told you a story about my 4-year-old son. So we're just going to leave it at that and say that pedal car exhibit is awesome.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Wait a minute. Did you break something in the museum? Maybe?
Isn't there something about like pleading the fifth or
Okay,
I'm not a lawyer?
Okay, never mind. Let's move on to...
Keep it going, Phil. Come on.
Let's move on to the facilities. For those who have not been here, especially when you pull up, there's a pretty big, expansive property for the
90
Gilmore.
acres.
90 acres.
90 acres.
How many buildings are open to the public?
The majority, there are only a couple of buildings that are out here that are not open to the public, and those are primarily our storage buildings, and I would say our operations and our operation shop. But realistically, we do open up the operation shop for some of our Gilmore Garage Works programming and educational courses and things like that. And sometimes we do take people through the storage buildings. But for all the rest of the buildings on the campus, proper display, there's more than 200,000 square feet of buildings, under roof that have collections and exhibits and galleries in them. Well, 210,000 now, I think, with the Classic Car Club of America Museum expansion.
Well, and that's is that buildings and grounds? Because I know I've been to car shows where, you've got beautiful green grass, which I don't know how you do it. I can barely mow my own. But when you have the car shows, it's all packed full on top of the building. So is that... In addition to,
yeah, definitely. I was just the 200,000 square feet or 210,220 is just the buildings.
Buildings.
Yep. And then
not
beyond
even
that,
counting the...
Exactly right. For every car show, for every cruise in, almost, especially in the central show fields, everything is basically parked in with show cars, swap meets, vendors, that sort of thing. But... yeah, it's neat. When the campus really does come to life. It's incredible to come through in any kind of weather and any kind of day and walk through the buildings and see the exhibits and the galleries. But the campus really comes to life when there are hundreds or thousands of cars and car people that descend on the Gilmore Car Museum. So it's a really neat time during this time of year to come out and enjoy it.
One of the first things you see are the Duesenbergs, right? When you come in
the 20s and 30s gallery, there's right now there's one of the Gilmore collections, Duesenberg in there. There's a row of 1934 Auburns where it's a different. It's every 1934 Auburn and each different body style, but with the same paint scheme. So as you go through the Heritage Center, it's each different room takes you to a different era in time or a different presentation. So whether it's the 20s and 30s gallery, into the 50s and 60s, then into the muscle cars, then into the Franklin, and then Lincoln, and then across the street on Dealership Row over to the Model A Ford museum, and then the Cadillac LaSalle dealership. It's you take a few steps and you kind of enter a different presentation. It's really, for the $16 ticket price, it's the Gilmore collection and then 7 different partner museums kind of all in one.
It's an unbelievable price, very affordable.
What are the partner museums?
So I started mentioning a bunch. So Franklin here.
Okay,
now
so
you're going to get me in trouble.
That's what I'm asking there.
Franklin. So all air cooled Franklins.
Yep.
Franklin, Lincoln, Cadillac LaSalle, Pierce Arrow, Classic Car Club of America. Then the Model A Ford, the Maffei Model A Ford Foundation, and then our newest partner museum is actually the folks at the Museum of the Horseless Carriage. So that's all brass era, pre-1916 or 1969 and earlier cars. And they do a really neat show out here. This will be the second year, called Celebration of Brass. And it's all... Last year, we had... People were trailering in their early cars from all over the country. We had 100, brass era cars and steam cars and all this. And what's great about this area is they were going on 3-hour driving tours around here, right? You can't do that in a big city or anywhere else. Michigan has beautiful roads to drive or ride around here during this time of year, and so they love it.
I had a customer who was big into brass era cars, and I mean, like he'd old Renaults, and he'd go to Europe just to find the guy whose great-grandfather made the brass headlights to have his repaired, and he knew all the history of all that. He had an electric car, a Baker, not a Baker.
I think,
from the 1800s. I mean, this guy, he took it to Europe for the London to Brighton run, and it was stayed in a battery company's showroom over there. Wild. And just today I was putting an axle in I think it's a 08 Thomas Flyer.
Mm-hmm. And so actually, it's interesting you say that. At the Celebration of Brass show, this will be the featured mark is Thomas.
Okay.
So we have a Thomas in the Gilmore collection that came from Jim Grundy. There is a Thomas being shipped over from another very, very old Thomas being shipped over from Australia. There's one coming up, I think, from Louisiana.
Yeah.
They believe that it may be the largest collection of Thomases in the United States at their show, which is, as I look at it, which is coming up on July 16th. So maybe that one's being prepared to be brought down as well. You'll have to tell.
It's been in the works for a long time. I don't know if it'll make it, but I do. I like the brass hair stuff. Now, you were telling us that you have new displays.
Yeah, some new
rotating
exhibits.
Things out.
Definitely, we try to rotate out. Actually, the museum policy is to try to rotate out at least 30% of what's on display each year, so that there is something new.
One more reason
our
to come
guests or
back.
our members to come back, and so it doesn't feel exactly the same. So, because of popularity and because of kind of COVID, not everybody got out here last year. We did decide to extend into 2022, into this year, the main gallery Corvette exhibit. So it's every generation of Corvette from C1 to C8.
Okay.
And so I can say it hasn't happened yet, but we're working things out where by the time folks listen to this, we have a kind of a new partnership with the General Motors and the GM Heritage Center.
Okay.
Very
cool.
We're
actually on our way. We picked out working with them. We worked together to kind of co-curate. We're going to have about 6 new very special Corvette race cars and concept cars coming over for a new exhibit to kind of refresh the Corvette exhibit for the rest of this year. And they're sending over another 4 special muscle cars for the McCacken muscle car meetup at the Gilmore later this year. So, the Corvette exhibit is a neat thing to check out, and there'll be some really great new vehicles from GM Heritage Center, the GM Heritage Collection as a part of that. And then upstairs in what we call our Campagna barn, we, the Gilmore and our partners at MAFI, the Model A Ford Foundation, we actually collaborated on what we're calling upstairs. It's an early Ford barn exhibit. So it's all early Fords. It's representation of the first 50 years of Ford. So it starts out with a 1903 Ford, and then you go on to Model Ts and Model A's and 32s and 36s and 40s, all the way on up to a 1950 is the Ford is the newest one in there. And then there's also a really killer 32 Ford hot rod, a 3-window coupe with an Oldsmobile rocket engine that just got delivered last week, to try to help tell the rest of the story in terms of how those Fords not only were popular in their day, but also have lived on for almost another 100 years of people customizing them and hot rodding them and building speedsters out of them, or building traditional hot rods out of them. And so that's a neat story to tell, and that's a new exhibit for this year here at the museum, and will be in place for Ford Model A days during their show and for the Relics Riot hot rod show. And so we're excited about folks to come check that out as well.
So do you have a favorite exhibit? I know that's kind of like asking who your
hood
favorite
ornaments.
is.
The hood ornaments.
It's hard to say, but I think
cool.
The hood ornaments, man, it's got to be cool. How awesome is that?
Yeah, I am definitely. I love all kinds of things, but I'm certainly partial to 60s cars or 50s and 60s cars, and to hot rods. So I kind of gravitate to those a little bit. But the presentation of everything that's out here is so neat, where it's like you're just, it's a kid in a candy store kind of situation as you walk around and look at. I mean, I want everything. I just don't have the budget or the barn space to be able to pull it off.
And by the way, shout out to the gift store. I have been in that gift. It's a wonderful gift store. When you are here, every museum has a gift store. This is a really cool one if you're a car nut like I am, and because nobody asked, I love the Lincoln exhibit. I'm not even a Lincoln guy. You've seen that. It's really cool. I saw several cars that my dad collected. My dad's no longer with me, but he was a Lincoln guy. And wow, was that really cool!
So it's a really nice presentation there.
It really is.
One other that I should mention, that if folks weren't here towards the end of summer last year, the Classic Car Club of America Museum, they built a 10,000 square foot expansion last year, and then entirely redid the presentation and the curation of everything in the original space, the 10,000 square foot edition, and their upstairs space, and did a really fantastic job with telling the story of pre-1948 luxury and coach-built, factory-built and coach-built luxury cars, what they call full classics. So that is definitely worth making the trip to come check out if you've not seen that. If you've not seen that in the last 6, 7, 8 months, it alone is worth making the trip to the Gilmore.
Gilmore is open in the wintertime as well. We're not going to talk about that, but just so you know, it doesn't close down for the winter. And if you don't make it here for this summer, plenty of opportunity. Josh Russell is the executive director of the Gilmore Car Museum. Everything we talked about, including you can order tickets online. You can do that right as you're listening to this podcast. GilmoreCarMuseum.org. GilmoreCarMuseum.org. I was going to say in the next episode, we are going to talk to Amy Everhart Perry, who is the Director of Development and Membership. If you are not a Gilmore member, by the time you listen to our next episode, you will be. Otherwise, Amy knows where you live, and she will see you about that. Anything else I forgot to mention, guys? Anything you wanted to ask, Josh?
Oh, we could go on for hours and hours.
Yeah, we could. We're going to wrap this up. That will do it for episode number 60. We remind you we're on Facebook. We're wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and we're cheap and easy, so make sure you share this episode with a friend. Like us, review our podcast, and we hope to hear from you on our Facebook page as well. Until next time, for Michigan's AutoTalk Podcast, I'm producer Phil Tower.
I'm Al Schwinkendorf.
I'm John Puhek. Thanks for listening.